that Terry, or that the chief was talking about, and that Josie heads up, is a great one to start with. As we look at traffic issues, you've been aware of some of the work that group has done. And so we can work on that. But specifically with enforcement, I think that's a big issue, and we can deal with that. Great officers, and they're right close by, so it's pretty brave and brazen of some young folks to try to do speeding in that area. But we can certainly look at enforcement there. So if afterwards you can give us the dates and times, or if you've ever experienced any kind of regularity to it, we can work on that.
So,
I'm the city manager. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's the big dog.
he's the one. Mayor, just to follow up on what Seth said, I think it's important to recognize that speed limit sign is not the thing that keeps people from going fast. It does at times make us feel better, but doing what Seth just talked about, sitting down and talking about what can we change in terms of the road, that's going to help any problems we have out there, not the black and white sign. In fact, you put it too arbitrarily low and it creates more problems than it's going to solve. So it's easy to point to that and say that's the problem. I mean, I've been in the traffic industry for 30 years and had to address these questions time and time again. But it's about enforcement. It's about making the road something that you don't want to drive 55 miles an hour on. And that is the balance that we face in the city. Is we get big roads to move a lot of traffic, and those big roads are conducive to speeding. And so you start narrowing them up, and people are like, well, my road is too narrow, but people aren't driving fast anymore. So it's a tough balance between the two, and I think that there are some things that can be instituted and built that can help, but the speed limit sign is not one of them. So I think if we could focus on something tangible on the ground, whether that's children at play sign, a bump, a tabletop, dips are scary to me, but something that forces people to slow down a little bit, I think we're better off. I live up on 11th East, and it's big and wide, and it's nice to commute to and from, but people go super fast. In fact, there's a stop sign with a bump, and everyone stops at the stop sign and the bump, and then they go super fast. And so many times it's my own neighbors or my own family doing it. So, we need to talk to our neighbors about not speeding through our own neighborhoods. But I think the approach that Chief said and Steve and Seth mentioned, I think that's the best way of going. And we're willing to take that advice and have the conversation for sure.
Yep, good. Chris, you want to address the other issue we got here?
Yeah, we'll make sure that's on the agenda for the traffic committee.
So, Chris, before we move on to the storm drain,
yeah.
so I was in someone's home yesterday and talking about another issue throughout the city, and they said, I just don't feel like I'm heard, or the city council doesn't listen to me. So as we have these conversations, I want to look to you guys and say, do you feel like we listened? Did we hear? Are you comfortable with heading that direction? I don't want you to walk away saying, we just gave you lip service and you left.
For me personally, your words, yes, make me feel comforted, but what really makes me feel
action.
listen is action.
Perfect.
What happens after?
Not just the talk now, what to do, it's
Hold us accountable.
setting a date.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's,
But
we get with these guys there.
verbally, I feel heard,
Okay.
and I feel validated.
Not just hold us accountable to those words. I would appreciate it.
Right. And by coming here, you make us aware of it as a council and the mayor, because then we put more heat on these guys, because we'll follow up on those guys. Okay, what about those people that came in? What are we doing about it? And if they're not, then you contact us, and because they'll listen to us. So that'll be good. They listen to you.
Know where you work, so.
Yeah.
And I really almost beg to differ about the speed sign, because there were times I'd come down the street and think, okay, I'm gonna put my cruise on 25, but maybe I'm not the norm.
Yeah, well, you're not 16, sorry. Those 16s don't know what that is. Yeah, so, and I agree with Councilman Marshall here is we need to also educate our own kids, to slow down, because that's our kids in those neighborhoods. That's that's going through there in the high school. And, when they start getting a few tickets, then all of a sudden reality sets in on them that, wow, this affects my pocketbook and it affects my driving record. And so all of a sudden, they'll find someplace else to go, not in our neighborhoods. Because we want to have safe neighborhoods. I don't want anybody, any of our children to be unsafe on those roads. And so we take it seriously. We want to make sure we're safe and we want to save our youth. We don't want anything to happen to them. They're too precious. Okay, Chris, you want to address?
Yeah, so on the storm drain issue on 8th North, I don't know what the video inspection of the pipe was, but I will go get your phone number and find out and get that to you. If it's pinched or has problems, then that'll be a priority to fix it.
Paige isn't sure if they've done a video inspection, right?
So we'll find out. So I'll come and get that.
Go video it.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll check out, see what we can do to solve that issue for you.
Video it, or Brandon and Shane and Mike, and Miracle, every time they come.
Thank you. And please, and make sure you always call them.
Brandon's my insurance agent.
Well, there you go.
So I called him and said, you fix one or the other, big guy.
She's my cousin, more importantly. I don't know why she chose to say
Full
insurance agent.
disclosure now.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Mayor, before we move on, would now be a good time to invite Dave Anderson up to address the question from our last city council meeting from Derek Gesslison?
Yes, where are you, Dave? There you go.
You
There was,
remember the question? I don't need to reiterate it. You can just
you can repeat that
paraphrase
question.
and-
Yeah, it was, I almost want to say more of a proposal than a question. And we've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Gesselson in the last couple of weeks about what he suggested, which I think particularly during a time when everybody is really, really concerned about limiting the use of water. Landscaping oftentimes is part of that conversation. New yards require more water than established yards. We have some requirements in the city relative to what people do with their yards and when they do it, which largely has to do with a program that we have that retains some money that's provided when building permits are issued, that's returned to the homeowner or the property owner when the front yard is landscaped. So that's kind of the incentive that we've come to have over the years, as we've struggled, frankly, with getting occasionally yards looking like oftentimes neighbors expect them to look. Just simply to be improved and be maintained and to be put into a condition that's relatively easy to maintain. So that indeed is what we've talked with Mr. Gesselson about. It's about how we use those funds, which his suggestion was, whereas right now we keep those funds until certain things are finished. Let's just say until the front yard's landscaped. He suggested that rather than to go that route, we give those funds to homeowners to encourage them to delay landscaping their yards, with the idea again that this probably is not the best time to be using the amount of water that's required to get yards established. Simply put, the concern that our building official and I have with that, I think in particular, is that really the only incentive that we've come to have to get people to landscape their front yards, aside from just somebody's maybe natural desire to do that, is those funds that we retain. So that essentially is the carrot that we dangle out in front of people to encourage them to get things landscaped. And neither John Little nor myself would feel comfortable going the route of releasing those funds prior to having certain things finished. So as we talked that through with, again, Mr. Gesselson, he brought up something that John and I had been thinking about, which is that essentially right now, the ordinance that we have requires people to landscape their front yard within the first year of when they occupy a new home, which incidentally is what this is all about. This is new development, new homes, and that type of a thing. I believe it makes good sense, and again, this is part of what he suggested, to give people more time now. Maybe we allow for 2 years. Maybe we allow for 2 years and we see what this next winter is like, relative to the snowpack and those types of things, and reevaluate it a year from now. I wholeheartedly support that. I'm very, very comfortable with that, in as much as, you know, we've been somewhat charged with the task to try to make sure that neighborhoods look good and the yards do get improved and that type of a thing. So that's something that we talked about, in fact, having a conversation with the council about. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I just have a question with that. So
Yeah.
can they do xeriscape, or does it have to be, like, could they do turf, xeriscape, rocks? No matter what they choose to do, they get their $2,500?
What you just described is correct. Yes, you can do any of those different types of things.
And also, we never force people to water. I believe that was one of the, they said the city requires them to water 4 times a week or 5 times a week. We do not do that.
We do not do
That was one of the comments that was made, and I just want that to be out there, that the city never forces anybody to water. Now, when you are in a neighborhood and your land value, you know, if I'm a neighbor and the next door neighbor's got weeds and stuff like that, I think this is why we put this in. We want to maintain that neighborhood and the property values of those other homes around it, and a good-looking neighborhood. So, you know, that's why we ask them to do something, even if it's a zero landscape.
Uh-huh.
You know, you don't have to plant grass. You can put rocks as long as it looks nice.
Dave, I think everyone knows how to plant grass or what grass looks like. You don't need a landscape design to do that. But to do a xeriscape well, it takes some knowledge and some design. Can we provide some sort of framework for someone to do that kind of work on their own? 'Cause I don't think anyone, it's more difficult, I think, to get it right. Maybe we could provide them with some standards they could pick up and say, okay, now I can go do something like this for my $2,500 instead of hiring a landscape architect for $1,000.
I'm hearing you say like best practices, that
Yeah,
type
other
of a
best
thing.
practices, yeah.
You know, I know oftentimes universities, extension agencies, and different things like that do have some really, really good information, you know, direction and counsel for people in that kind of situation. I think it's a great idea.
Just to
We look into
provide them
that,
with
and
that,
we
yeah.
perhaps, you know, just kind of be a facilitator and disseminate that information. Xeriscaping, as I understand it, it's typically more expensive.
It is.
And it's much harder to do in such a way that it doesn't require a lot more maintenance, if you can believe that, than just mowing your yard once a week and that type of a thing. So I think that's an ambitious, certainly, approach to take, but it absolutely also can be very efficient from a water use perspective.
Mike, you made a comment a couple weeks ago after that the farmland that all of these people have built on actually used a lot more water when they were watering all their land. Is that correct? So now that these homeowners are here, they're actually using a significant amount of less water than the farmer was previous to their home.
Right.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
no, that's
Okay.
true. Yeah, simply because you're metering water now that's going on people's lawns, and so yeah, while they are trying to grow that young grass, they're watering quite a bit. But especially, I mean, the Rachio system, that if you haven't taken advantage of the Rachio system that's free in your city, where you're missing out on huge savings, but also ease of life. So I would encourage you, anytime you're in the new home, and make sure you get with the city to get that Rachio system, because especially these last couple of weeks where we've had these move in, all I get is a notification on my phone, you skipped watering, right? And then I didn't do anything, it just skipped, right? And the grass is still brown. Well,
Yeah,
it's a
don't
little-
buy your own clock,
Yeah.
right? Don't buy your own clock. Let the city provide you one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and we've worked, and the reason why that works, you've heard it a million times in the city now, but the reason why that works is because some people made some great decisions years and years ago, and the city's kept it up, and so it's great.
Well, thanks for addressing that. I think that was important.
I appreciate that. We'd be happy to do research on, you know, some maybe just thoughts that we can share with
I
residents.
think that'd
We
be
can-
helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Let's move to council comments. Councilmember Beck.
I'm first? Okay.
Why not?
Great.
Great. Now, I know I talk a lot about Fiesta Days this time of year, and that's where I want to start. There's so many people I want to first thank. the committee, the executive committee, and the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that helped make what I believe was the best Fiesta Days yet. I don't know why it felt so much different. Maybe it was because last year it was so minimal, but it was just incredible. And not only our volunteers, but our Parks and Rec department, our police department, SFCN, they all came together to do so much. So just a big round of applause to all of you guys. Thank you so much. And as I was thinking over Fiesta Days today, I just wanted to share my top 5 things. So it didn't go on forever, Mayor.
Thank you.
So I put down, my number 5 was the Grand Parade. And this was Mayor Leifson's last parade of 16 years riding through the parade. And Mayor and his sweet wife Cheryl was in the truck ahead of the council. And so we didn't see all the tears that Cheryl was shedding throughout the parade, but it was emotional when we got to the end. She was touched, and we just want to say thank you. It was good to see so many people out and about around the parks and just make it work. This picture I took from our vantage point going through right there around the park, and it went really, really well. So the parade was number 5. Number 4 was the Sunday night in the park. And for me, our committee really was wondering, like, if an orchestra was going to go over very well. Like, are people going to want to come down and listen to this? Are we going to get a lot of backlash that we're hokey and, you know? But all Sunday, I was just like, oh, I can't wait to just go down to the park tonight and just relax. And it was a full house. The park was at full capacity. There were people clear back to every side of the streets, and it was just a very, very nice night. So thank you for coming to that.
My kids after that, they said, you know what you should do with the library? Turn it into an amphitheater
Yes,
like this.
we've heard that.
Yep.
It's fun. We
I was
definitely
like,
should.
who are you kids? What are you talking about? You went to a symphony and loved it. So,
Yeah, that's
absolutely, it was
awesome.
fun.
Good. Number 3 was the flag retirement ceremony. It was the coolest flag retirement ceremony we've ever been to. It was also the first ceremony that the Boy Scouts weren't there lined up to retire the flags. This picture, Pete Hansen at SFCN took, and it's Officer Dallas Smith's son, I believe, handing this military army guy a flag, and it just captures like the face, the emotion, so special. And so many people were able to participate because we opened it up to everyone, families, groups, Miss Spanish Fork, our executive committee, they all took flags out. So I really liked it this year. I thought that was really great. So number 2, I chose, yes.
That flag retirement right there is the largest in the nation, not only in Utah, but it was the largest in the nation of flag retirement. So one of the officers mentioned that to me, so we needed to make sure
That's awesome.
yeah, it was awesome.
Okay, and number 2, I chose the Pyro Musical. Back in May, I was kind of begging for sponsorships and funds to come in to pay for the Pyro Musical. And we were at $10,000. We didn't know if we would make it. And we ended up with $31,000 of sponsorships. Young Living came in with $8,000 at the very last minute to help us reach that point to make this Pyro Musical what it is. We had 2 bands, 24 food trucks. It was just a really, really great night. So thanks to everyone involved for pulling together such an amazing event. Usually someone else had overseen the Pyro Musical. This was the city's first year doing it, and Mike Clayson, who used to be on the committee, now oversees this, and he just did a fabulous job in his committee, so thank you. And so my number 1 Fiesta Days memory, I have to give my hats off to Councilman Shane Marshall. This just helped bond us all as a council. So let's watch this. Yes, it helped bond, yeah, all of us.
All of us.
Yum.
We need to watch that again.
Yeah, let's just play that one more time
Just over and over.
and bring to your attention when he gets back up and shakes his head and spits all the water and whatever else was in the water.
And it's all clean water. It's all real clean.
There we go. We're happy to announce that Councilman Marshall won the belly flop contest and helped bond us. Like, we feel like you are truly initiated
Oh,
now.
really? Is that what it takes? Be careful, you guys that are running for city council.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
It was a wild night. It was after one of the biggest rainstorms we've had in like decades, and it was a crazy night, and it was memorable for wherever you lived in town or wherever you were in town that night. It was just a memorable night. So Shane, thanks for making it memorable. So moving on from Fiesta Days, the Youth City Council, big helpful hands at all of the events they were participating in with Fiesta Days. This Thursday, they're actually going to be helping at the library. Next week, they're going to Diamond Fork remodel and helping them get their school ready for back to school. So our Youth City Council is so excited to be engaged and serving, because last year they really were not able to do a lot of things. And the library this Thursday night at 6:15 will be holding their end of year summer reading program. So if you were participating this summer, we invite you to come down. There's going to be a dunk tank, games, food. It's going to be a lot of fun. So again, this Thursday at the library park at 6:15. And, I wanted to encourage people to also follow the library on social media. They are always offering classes that you may not even be thinking about, but you can definitely sign up and attend. So I encourage you to look at their website and social media. And lastly, this is the last week for the primary election in Spanish Fork for City Council. So get your ballots in. I was just told that 9% of the people have voted. 9%. We've got to get the ballots off our counters and into the mailboxes. We need to hear your voice and get those ballots in. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Right. Wow, good job. All right, Councilman Mendenhall.
Thank you.
And you
Mayor.
don't need to beat her time.
I'm gonna beat it. Just kidding. Yeah, so first, I'm excited. I usually do like a Fifth City Active and Healthy Minute. I'm gonna punt that to the 101. I'm excited to get a 101 on Spanish Fork Wellbeing Survey that's gone out to citizens, and we've got some responses about some of the cool stuff and some of what's been mentioned here today, but focusing on the well-being of our citizens, and I'm really excited to hear the 101 about that study. Rotary meeting today was great to be with the council candidates that came and spoke to the Rotary. There was a lot of discussion about people remembering the Rotary Club and when they went and how long they've been there and things, and I started thinking back. And when they started mentioning that it used to be held up at the Oak Crest Inn, I vividly remember going up to the Oak Crest Inn and speaking to the Rotary. I don't even know what it was for.
I remember.
You remember?
I remember you speaking.
Yeah, it was probably great.
I've just got out of therapy over it.
So it must have not been that good, but I remember that, and the Rotary now meeting at Macy's every Tuesday is just a great organization. And the council candidates did a great job in their 4.5 minutes or whatever they got to talk to the Rotary Club. But it brought me to another Rotary quick minute. I'm just going to read an email that is pretty cool. I didn't ask her if I could say her name, but it's public because she is the Gatorade Player of the Year, right? You think I'm safe, Ken? All right. So Avery Sapp of Spanish Fork High School is the 2021 Gatorade Utah Softball Player of the Year. Sapp is the third Gatorade Utah Softball Player of the Year to be chosen from Spanish Fork High School. So that's not all that uncommon in Spanish Fork for how good our softball and baseball players are. Did you ever get Gatorade Player of the Year? Ah, okay.
It wasn't Gatorade when I played.
Oh, okay.
Water of the Year.
Well, Avery did. And here's the cool thing. Avery, Kent reached out to me because he needed to get in touch with the Rotary Club and get their 501c3 status, because he received a phone call from Gatorade that Avery Sapp was awarded the $1,000, and then she asked to have the funds donated to the Spanish Fork Rotary Club. So how cool is that? All the cool kids in Spanish Fork that we get to hang around and be with, but someone that's achieved that status and got that money decided to hand it over to the Rotary Club because they do good things in the community. So I say that a lot to people when they ask us, especially us when we're council members and the mayor, hey, what do I do? How do I get involved? Telling you the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, the Kiwanis Club are all doing awesome things in the community, and this is just one more instance of somebody recognizing that. So great job, Avery, and the Rotary will do some good things with that money. Lastly, at Rotary meeting today, Lana Hiskey is one of our Rotarians that's always there and is great to always keep us up to date on Nebo School District, which is a huge important part of our community. Some people always ask us about school issues, and I usually have a one-liner that says, hey, our meeting's on Tuesday nights, that one's on Wednesday night, just down the road, right at the district offices. So it's not like we have a lot of authority, a lot of say in what goes on, but we are publicly elected officials and coordinate and collaborate with them on a whole lot of things. I asked her if it was okay to read just a portion of this because it's pertinent for what's on our parents' minds, including mine and everybody else's. But this email went out to parents of Nebo School District children, and it went out today. So if you haven't seen it yet, you'll check your email inboxes and see it. But I'll just sum up the very bottom part of it. It has to do with COVID-19 protocols for the school district. And it says, be smart. So the acronym is SMART. Stay home when you're sick or when waiting for COVID test results. Masks are a personal choice, but may prevent sickness and quarantine. A, advocate for distancing when possible. R, remember good hygiene and sanitation. And T, talk to your health care provider about vaccinating eligible students. So again, uncharted waters that we're in here, a year into a pandemic and trying to manage it as a city, trying to manage it as a state, trying to manage it as a country, but also a school district. And I applaud them for just going through some tough times and trying to do their best to make sure our kids are healthy, happy, and safe and learning in school. And so there's an update that Lana told me I could share in council meeting tonight because she knew millions of people would be watching. Yep. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. I too wanted to say thank you to the Fiesta Days Committee. I had texted the Mulesteins and expressed thanks for being on the executive committee, and they said, we know not to answer our phone the next time you call. And she actually ended her text, said, I never thought I'd say this, but we're glad that we accepted the call. So just so you know, Stacy and her crew are going to be looking over the next month, and if you silence your cell phones in case you get the call up. But everyone that has served will always tell you that Councilman Mendenhall included, and the small role I've played on that, it's so much fun to be involved in the service of Fiesta Day. So thank you, Councilwoman Beck, and all those who have helped out. Saturday there was a event down at the rodeo arena where Tabitha's Way gave out backpacks to all the children. Kudos to them and kudos to all the volunteers that helped in such a wonderful event. I wanted to give them a shout out. Last Saturday was also our first week of the farmers market. It has moved west from, obviously if you've been out here, you see our parking lot is under construction outside of City Hall, and so it is just west by where the drag races take place, by the public safety building, and we didn't have enough produce to sell our own this last week, but all the comments have been positive, and people are excited about being able to stretch out and accepting of a change. I can tell you that 20 plus years ago we were at the library park and we kicked and screamed when we moved over here, and now we kick and scream a little bit to move down there, but overall sometimes we don't like change, but I think it'll be a wonderful welcoming thing. A lot of the same vendors, so I invite everyone to please get to the farmers market and get some fresh local produce. There's been a lot of buzz about a new playground set that's going in across the street at our new the old library, and here's just a picture that Nick has up here of what that'll look like. If any of you watched the Meet the Candidate night, you could hear the old swings in the playground the whole night. And I don't know that we'll have any of that with some of this new and updated playground equipment. So we're excited for that, and thank Parks and Rec for that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was thank you, Landon Took, for your comments. I bet you can't guess which council member drove their soon-to-be fiance blindfolded up to the cross to ask them to marry him. Wow. Nope. Mendenhall.
We made it.
You
We
barely made it.
Yeah, and we're 18 years happily married. So.
Okay, I just know she's told the story. It's a very traumatizing way to be asked to marry her, but the cross is near and dear to my heart. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Great. Councilman Argal.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to also give my thanks to, first of all, Councilmember Beck and her committee, the many volunteers in our city that takes to pull off Fiesta Days. What a great 2 weeks period with all the events that take place. I know Chief Adams, I know your officers, that's a week that they probably dread because they're there to keep us safe and get us in and out, and they still have to take care of our city in the meantime. Parks and Rec, what an awesome job they did. I got up Monday morning, and I don't know why I do this, but I drive down here and you couldn't tell that there was even a celebration that took place on this. Dale, what an awesome, the only thing that was there was the 100 garbage cans that were lined along the side, and that's the only way you could tell. Parking lot was already started to be torn down because we had things. What an awesome job they do to keep our city clean and beautiful. And I know it takes all of the city departments to pull this off, especially with the rain we had. We had our public safety emergencies out that night, and also our streets department helping these people that were flooded. Our streets were flooded. It was a unique evening, to say the most, but thank you to those volunteers and to the committee. Stacy, I know it's a lot of work to pull this off, but it's a great celebration, and it was wonderful to see everybody out. To not have it and then to return to have it was so great. To see those people and just be able to get out. And I know they just wanted to get out too, and it's great to see the families. That's the best part. Families all week long together celebrating, barbecuing, and doing the things they do on Fiesta Day. So thanks from me. I want to address, so a week ago when the question was asked about our policy concerning what we do with our landscaping and stuff like that. First I want to talk a little bit, because I think probably there's not a member up here, council member, that hasn't received or run into somebody talking about what's going on this year with the drought. According to the professionals, they say this drought actually started in 2001, 20 years ago. The old saying, as a rancher was going to hire a new ranch hand, and he was interviewing him, he just said, what do you do? And he had just a simple answer. He said, when the wind blows, I sleep. All that means that rancher hand was prepared for what was going to happen. Spanish Fork City, it is not the time to prepare for the drought as in 2021. We've been preparing for this 20 years ago and before. And just to mention a few of the things, I know I mentioned a while back the Cold Springs. We redid Cold Springs, one of our springs up the canyon, and when we got done with that, we netted 30% more water out of that spring. Right now we're getting ready, and I don't know if some of this stuff is in the works, and going to be one of the water lines down the street or down the canyon is being relined because it's old and needs to be replaced. We're tearing down one 2 million gallon tanks, and we're putting a brand new 5 million gallon tank at the mouth of the canyon because these are old and decaying. I know that it's inconvenient, but throughout the city on every summer, there are places where you can go where we're replacing water lines that need to be replaced and save water, and also save us from having a water break. The water department has taken us from a loss of water of 25% down to somewhere at 10%. What a huge amount of improvement, and they're continuing to try to improve on that, and it's taken them a long time to do that. They continue to replace these lines. We also recently have approved at the golf course to replace the sprinkler system, and this has been something that's been going on for the last couple of years, and we finally got it there. Millions of gallons of water will be saved from us taking that step off the golf course. If you've noticed, Governor Cox is calling for some urgent, and yeah, our reservoirs are all down, and we're in a bad spot right now. We're in a drought. But one of the things he's going to put on the agenda for the legislating is to meter their water. Well, guess what? When you mentioned the people before us and their forethought, our PR is already metered. We're way ahead of them. And also right now they're putting new meters on our culinary water so that you can monitor yourself and watch that down to the gallon of water, so that if you have something break, you're not paying more money and we're not wasting water. It was mentioned about the smart sprinklers controllers. That program's an ongoing program. What an awesome way to help you to control the water on your property. We, as a city, have already met the 2030 plan for the state. We're there. We're going to continue. And do we need to do more? Yes, we do. We'll continue to do that. Some of the things, I know if you've noticed, as you drove around the city, our parks aren't as green as they usually have, because we've scaled that back a little bit. And we're watching our water use very closely. We appreciate those people that give us comments and concerns about our water, because we want to watch them, and we'll continue doing that. You put that back up.
That's coming.
Tyler, sorry. I just wanted to bring up, because when it was brought up about some of the things that this was landscaping of our properties. Now, I just built a brand new home. I have lawn and I have shrubs, and yes, it takes a little more water to get your lawn going. But the main purpose of this is pretty simple. It's just to conserve and stabilize property values by encouraging pleasant and attractive surroundings, and provide a proper separation between use, landscaping, and also contribute to the reduction of heat, glare through the proper placement of plants, trees, and shrubs. I think that's important. I know we need to do smart plants and things like that. I'm not a real huge fan of this whole city being rocks, asphalt, and concrete. Those comments right there, it keeps us cooler, nicer neighborhoods. Spanish Fork City is very prepared for the drought. We're in a good place. And yes, we need to continue to watch our drought, and yes, we need to continue to do things, and we will. I promise you. That's on our forefront. We're listening, we're hearing, we're trying to do things, we're watching each other and our water concerns. But Spanish Fork, we sleep good at night, because our water use is in good place, and we'll continue to do that. One other issue that I would just like to bring about that was, and the mayor mentioned about, there's nowhere in this that it tells them that they have to. It does have some requirements and trees and stuff like that in the planners, but nowhere in there does it tell them they have to water. If you put new lawn down, you don't want it to die, so you do have to water. And Mike mentioned that most of this ground was farm ground. It was irrigated, acre feet. So an acre foot of water, that's a foot of water on an acre. That's a lot of water. We don't use that much water, but the city does use that water. As we build subdivisions, we take water and use that. There was one other thing that was mentioned in that, and I feel the need to bring it. As the comment was made, and this isn't the first time this has happened. It's happened several times right in this council, and it's happened on Facebook, and it's also happened in neighborhood meetings and stuff like that. Accusing the council and the mayor and the departments of making deals with contractors and developers. I, for one, are tired of my integrity being questioned. I've been here 6 years, and I have not witnessed that. We've not done that. We don't do that. We don't make backdoor deals with developers in order to get things done. Do they have to follow these policies? Absolutely. If they have a homeowners association, the developer is responsible to put the landscaping in, not the homeowners. So that's part of their deal. But never have I seen that, nor ever would I have done that, nor will I. And I just want to comment that I think that's not fair to continue to question the integrity of these great people sitting up here. I know each one of them personally. There's been issues, and some of those things, they can do damage really quick. Please consider your comments when you're talking about what's going on with our city. Ask questions. There's not a one of us who won't take your phone call, even if it's a questionable one. Somebody told me once that if I run for council, all I become is a yelling post. I have not had that. My opportunity to serve this city has been honorable, and I have been blessed. And the people that I've had issues with, I have not had a problem. I'm okay with being yelled at. Where I worked was the phone company. I got yelled at a lot there. You would know that. So I was okay with that because you're frustrated. I'm okay with that. But to continue to question our motives and our integrity is not fair to us. We deal forthwith with everything that we do and our dealings with this community and city. Each one of us, I know, have a dear love for this city. We do. We've all lived here for many years and will continue. And I just want to comment that. Please consider that when you're talking to us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Marshall, or the belly flop champ.
The belly flop champ. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Beck.
Oh, thank you.
So this is my first Fiesta Days, and I think we should rename it Fiesta Month, because it was the entire month of July. It was the first time as a city council member being behind the scenes a little bit and watching it work, and it is truly amazing, the effort that it takes to pull something like that off. And what I found interesting was that it was tough to tell a city staff member from a volunteer. Just everyone is on the same team, pulling the same direction and wanting to do good stuff. It was really impressive. And if I have the chance to serve in the next year, please don't put me on that committee. I will go do about anything else, because that is a ton of work. And you should get a pat on the back. I will jump in mud before
you serve on that committee.
No, I will do whatever it takes. It was a great event, and I'm very impressed. Chief Adams, are you still here? Not sure. Your police officers were just amazing all week long, walking around the park. I think really convincing me that the police officers are part of the community, and they're there to help us and protect us. And all this rhetoric you see outside of Utah, outside of Spanish Fork, I get it, I understand it, but it's not here, and your folks did a tremendous job of just making us feel comfortable. So thank you for that, I appreciate that. I don't know what to talk about in these comments. So I was in a home the other day, and I have just a question to ask everybody, I guess. Could you pull the general plan? So the council approved a zone change for the slaughterhouse on the north end, right? That area, I don't believe is in the city boundaries yet. And I'm just, the question was asked, are we thinking about annexing it anytime soon? And I don't know the answer. And I'm honestly not sure where to go, other than here. I guess I could call Dave and talk to him about that.
It is in the city.
So how far, what's the growth boundary?
Look at both of these.
All right, so the red line is what today?
This is the policy boundaries.
Come on up, Dave, and
Come on, Dave, help me out.
Is the-
Educate me.
give the new guy the 101.
If you turn on the zoning layer, it might be a little bit easier. talk about what's in the city now and what's not.
That's a better place to go. Okay.
So what you were just looking at includes lands that would be annexed into the city, but that are not currently in Spanish Fork. This is the current city boundaries. I think it's the easiest way to see.
Gotcha.
If you're talking about this general area here, tomorrow night on the Planning Commission agenda is an annexation that would include a fairly large part, I would just say, of this area right here.
Soon. Okay.
And that we would expect to have on your agenda on the 17th of this month, so 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay.
And then there are other plans,
It's
so now.
that piece right there. It's that triangle piece
Right in here.
right in there.
Yeah.
So that's imminent. The conversation is
The
imminent.
conversations, yeah, that's a good way to put
Okay.
it.
All right. That's the information you need to know.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, man. That's it.
Great, well, thank you.
I will yield the rest of my time to Councilmember Beck.
No, she's had her time.
Okay.
Councilman Beck, I was a little surprised that your picture, you say your favorite thing. This is what I thought your favorite picture right here is, having Congressman Burgess Owens' Super Bowl ring on her hand. So that's pretty cool,
Why
right
isn't
there.
her dance anywhere on here?
Yeah.
We've all forgot it.
She's got it, it's got it, but also, the reason I put this up, you can go to the next slide. Congressman Burgess, he doesn't even represent our area, but he loves Spanish Fork. I've had the opportunity to, when he first got elected, he came down to my office and we met, and from since then, he's just talked, he calls me up and asks me about certain things, and I just tell him, this is how we do it in Spanish Fork, and he listens and he likes it. He asked to come down to our 24th of July. He said, I want to come down and celebrate with you guys. So yesterday was his birthday. They had a surprise birthday party for him up in West Valley, and they invited us up, so Cheryl and I went up there. Next slide there. And there it is, Fiesta Day, you know, one of my favorite things to do. To be a part of this city is amazing, especially with all the Fiesta Days and all the great people that we have here to work with. I want to thank everyone that, not only from our Fiesta Day committee, but I want to thank the city for celebrating and party the way we do. You know, it's a great city, and it's all up for you. It's for all you people to enjoy and celebrate and be a part of this thing that we can call our hometown. And it's kind of a cool thing that we have going here, and people envy it and want to be a part of it. So thank you. I just wanted to shout out to thank everyone that was involved, and let's just continue to be Spanish Fork. We're the city that always leads out. Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect. But you know, we're always striving to be there and doing the best we can, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you. Okay, let's go to Spanish Fork 101, Spanish Fork Wellbeing Survey Update.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Thank
pull
you,
that.
Council, and thank you to those of you who are in the audience here. I'm Courtney Flint. I'm a Utah State University professor in sociology, and I'm a community resource specialist in USU Extension. And I'm pleased to be here tonight. It's been a pleasure to work with Spanish Fork this year. I'll share just a few of the findings with you. Spanish Fork is one of over about 35 cities that's been involved in this project, just joined the project here in 2021. The goal of this well-being project is just really to provide Utah City leaders with information on the well-being and the perspectives of residents, to inform their general planning processes, and just to help you keep your finger on the pulse of your community. The Utah League of Cities and Towns has suggested that this information might be helpful for planning the use of American Rescue Plan funds, as you'll see perhaps why, as you look into this, why some of it might be useful there. So Spanish Fork is one of 5 cities within Utah County. And on our website, we have Spanish Fork's city report, so you can take a look at that. If you just Google
Utah Wellbeing Project, USU, and it'll pop up for you. You can also see our statewide summary report, the Utah County summary, and all of the other city reports are up there as well. I'll just hit some highlights for you tonight quickly and answer some questions you might have, but I encourage you to take a look at the details there. So the Wellbeing Survey was conducted in February of this year, and it was a real partnership with you as a city. We do this in order to keep the cost at zero for your city and all of the cities to participate. There's no cost to be part of this and to get this survey data, which is unusual in these days because surveys are expensive. But you guys took care of advertising and recruiting for this survey, and you did an excellent job. We had 770 surveys recorded. 642 of those were fully complete. 770, though, had usable data that we could work with. So really a tremendous effort, the second highest number of responses in the state this year. So that was really great. We like to be very, very transparent about who we've heard from and who we haven't. Surveys will reach some and they won't reach others. So 93% of the folks were full-time residents here. The average length of residence was 18 years, but it really spanned from brand newcomers to those who'd been here 78 years. So it was a wide array of folks. 31% had lived here 5 years or less, so you can pick up on those newcomers. It's a rapid growth city, as you know. We asked about religion in our demographics, and some might ask us, why do we do that? But it does turn out to be quite a significant variable when you look at issues of well-being and perspectives in the community, quite significant. So we do ask that. Not everyone answers, but from those who have answered, we have 61% or more from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and only you will know whether that feels accurate for your community because we don't have any census numbers or anything to compare that to. The survey does underrepresent certain groups. We heard from fewer of that group in the 18 to 29 age group, and then those who are 70 and over. The rest of the groups were very representative. We hear from more women than men. That's just common in survey research across the board, especially online surveys. Those without a college degree, a little bit less than the census tells us. Some of the Hispanic and Latino population and the non-whites a little bit lower than the census tells us are here. Those who are not married and those who are renting, we don't tend to hear from them as much as the others. So we like to be very clear about who we're hearing from and who we're not. But personal well-being in Spanish Fork is really great. The average was a 4.06 on a scale of 1 to 5, with 81% saying they were a 4 or 5, basically good or excellent on that scale. And that's very high. As we compare you to the rest of the communities in the survey this year, Spanish Fork was above average, both for the rapid growth communities in the study as well as all of the cities in the study. So well-being is really looking pretty good here in Spanish Fork. Community well-being is across the board always a little bit lower than the personal well-being. People often think they're doing better than the community as a whole. But I will remark that here in this community, that gap between personal well-being and community well-being was much narrower than in other communities. So that's a really good thing. With 70% saying a 4 or 5 on this scale is actually really quite high for the study as a whole. So you can see Spanish Fork really up here amongst really the top 5 or 6 communities in the study. We also get into the different categories or types of well-being. We call these the well-being domains, and this is asking about 10 different things that are nationally and internationally studied as being part of what makes up our well-being. And so we ask folks to rate their well-being in these categories and also tell us how important these categories are to their overall well-being, which allows us to look in this matrix. And we can find here that the highest rated domain in Spanish Fork was living standards, followed closely behind by safety and security. The most important categories of well-being for folks here were safety and security and mental health, and followed closely by living standards and physical health. So those were the things most important. We have this red zone down here, and these are the things that are really important to folks but are not rated quite as high as some other domains. And for your community, physical health falls in this location, and mental health is actually approaching this zone too. So this is what we sometimes refer to as sort of an action arena, where this might be something that the residents would appreciate some additional attention to. We can't go into the details, we don't have time on this, but this is actually, we look across communities at these things, but we also look within them and at the demographic characteristics. And really all I want to point out here, the details are in the report, but you can see that income makes a big difference. Higher income tends to show that your well-being is rated a bit higher. that religion does pop up as a very influential category here, variable in your community. And then gender being important, rating well-being in some of these categories is a bit lower than their male counterparts, but also feeling that some of these issues are more important to them. So we do have some gender issues, and age comes up as a fairly significant variable as well. This last year, of course, we did this survey purposefully in the middle of the COVID pandemic because we've had about 20 communities that had done this survey in prior years, and they wanted to sort of be able to compare. Now, you guys just started this year with the idea being that if we were to come back to Spanish Fork a year or two from now and do this survey, you'd like to see those numbers rebound even more, because we did do this survey as we were all wrestling with this COVID pandemic. For 41% of the respondents, their well-being, personal well-being had declined in the last year, and they felt that the community's well-being had declined for 36%. This is amongst some of the lower percentages statewide in the study, so not a very strong effect, but these numbers are not inconsequential. But what was declining? You know, here in Spanish Fork we saw that, and this is typical across the study, across the state, but the things that really declined and were affected by the COVID pandemic were the social connections, cultural opportunities. You mentioned your Fiesta Days not being able to happen. I think people really felt those kinds of things, the loss of them. And mental health was really experienced some declines for folks, more so than, say, the physical health that we might have associated with the pandemic. And so the community well-being was seen as more likely to decline for those who had actually lived here longer than 5 years. They had those ties and really felt that the community felt the impacts. Living standards and mental health were more likely to decline for those without a college degree, so education played a role here. Community connections. Spanish Fork is really notable here by being having very high community connections, people feeling a strong sense of connection or belonging to Spanish Fork. You know, you're right up there with a lot of very small rural communities. So in terms of the more urban places, you just blow them out of the water. The other thing we find is that community connection is very strongly related to well-being scores. So those who feel more stronger connections to their community had higher well-being scores. And this has been shown, you know, beyond the state of Utah, but it's really remarkable across the state, but very strongly here in your community. So community connections make a real difference in the quality of life for folks. There are some concerns. So we have over 2/3 of the respondents with major or moderate concerns about roads and transportation. I think this, from the comments, suggests this includes traffic issues. Affordable housing and air quality were at the top of that list. But we also had over half of the respondents indicate major or moderate concern with some other issues as well. Opportunities for youth, access to public land, public safety, recreation opportunities, and water supply. Some of these things we've been hearing about and discussing tonight. The other concerns from the open comments, you know, there are some folks talking about the pace of growth and development, which I'll get back to in a second. Some concerns about losing that small town feeling, a little concern about high density housing, the loss of open space and farmland, local government communication, and some folks talking about they'd love a recreation center, and that's something that's important to them. And there's lots of other comments that I have shared with Seth and his team, and so you have all of those comments, and they go on for pages and pages, and we'll make sure that you have access to those. So lots of comments, lots of people took the time to write things. You know, this economic and population growth issue, we found that population growth is perceived as too fast by 70% of the respondents here, but people are a little more divided when it comes to economic development. Really, right there split between feeling that it's just right and perhaps a little bit too fast. We can break that down a little bit more. We look at landscapes. Of course, the effect of growth is going to affect the landscapes to a certain extent. Your folks here in your community just really value the natural landscapes, the mountain, the rivers, the lakes, the trails, and the parks, and including the farmland. Those developed landscapes have a little bit more of a mixed perception there, but those percentages on the negative aren't as high as they are in some other communities. But the development in the industry has a little bit of a negative effect for some of the respondents here, but certainly not for all. When we look at actually residential and commercial development, you can see Spanish Fork here, right in the core of those rapid growth cities, not quite as negative as some others. And when we look at industry, you can see it's in that sort of negative quadrant about industry, but not nearly as negative as some of the other rapid growth communities. So there's a little less of a negative impression of those things. And as people are answering these questions, I think sometimes they're answering it more hypothetically than having something in specific in their mind about an industry. It's just the concept of it in their landscape. So not as nearly as negative as in some other places in Utah County. Just to finish up here, we ask folks, what do you value most about your community? And, your respondents really wrote a lot of heartfelt comments here. They really love it here. They value the small town feel, that sense of being connected to one another and the community, the good amenities that they have around, the abundant recreation and access to nature. They feel there's a well-run government here. They feel safe, and many, many other comments that I would encourage you to look at when, Nick, hopefully you can get those open comment reports to the council so they can see those. And with that, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but the reports are online, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. And at your disposal, if you'd like to do this again, we would love to continue to partner with you in the future if we can continue to track these things over time or help you with any other survey needs you might have. Thank you very much.
Sure appreciate your time and effort on that. That's very valuable information for us, and we'll take it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we want you to come back, because we'll like to see how we compare.
Wonderful. I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, let's move on to the consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second. Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We don't have a public hearing. New business, proposed J-6 annexation acceptance for further study.
Thank you, Mayor. The subject property in this case is located, we'll be able to see in just a second, at the end of the runway at the Spanish Fork Airport. It's roughly 90 acres right there. This is the runway. This is 800 West over here.
That really gives a good perspective of where this at, the city.
Yeah, right. Does anybody not know where the airport is? Did we start there? Did we start there?
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate it.
There aren't a lot of landmarks out here, so we'll. This is the state route that
Oh, now I know where it is.
turns into 400 South in Springville, intersects with I-15 about 2 miles to the east of here. Again, about 90 acres. Presently, the properties to the south that are within this boundary here are in the city, so it'd be contiguous with the city to that extent. And the general plan currently calls for the property eventually to be developed industrially. What's before the council tonight is just simply to accept the proposal for further study. It doesn't bind the council in the future to act on it, to approve it, that is. But it's an important step that, Nick, if you can maybe just scroll up to the next page, that would put a process in motion that would follow something like this. There are certain notifications that need to be provided. We would start that within the next week and start on some study work that is intended to provide ultimately you with information that might be helpful as you decide a couple of different things. First of all, if the property should be annexed and how it should be zoned, then as well, if it were to be annexed into the city. We would anticipate hitting these particular dates, so if you accept it tonight for further study, then in all likelihood, I think it would be back on your agenda in a little over 2 months. There'd be a public hearing at that point in time. Staff would have a recommendation. You'd also have a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and that simply is how things would unfold. At this point in time, I recommend that you accept the annexation for further study. This is an area where there's considerable investment being made in infrastructure right now. That's a little bit further to the east. Things are being done for the solid waste district and other anticipated projects in the area. Sunrock is developing just a little bit to the south and east of this property. We think this in all likelihood is a pretty important piece to have in Spanish Fork in the near future.
Requested by the landowner, annexation?
Correct, yes.
All right, if there's no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve proposed J6 annexation acceptance for further study.
Sorry. Got a motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by, was it you? Yep. Councilmember Hall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Don't leave, Dave. On the property we talked about earlier, is that a similar timeline that could be expected? It's just maybe a month behind?
That one is about 2 months ahead of this one, the one we just talked about.
Okay.
Yes, you'll see that in 2 weeks.
For approval to be annexed?
For approval, yes. So the council previously accepted that for further study.
Gotcha.
And we're that far along in the process that right now we're at the tail end of that.
So at the planning commission tomorrow, they're gonna make a recommendation to the city council?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right, ordinance 16-21, amending Title 13 regarding utility policies. Who's taking that one?
Mayor, could you move that to the end of the new business? Seth wanted to be here if he could be.
Okay, we'll move that down. We'll table that until the end of F here. So let's go to C, Easter Seal Goodwill Host Agency Agreement.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Scott, the Library Director. We are excited about this opportunity that we've been approached with by Easter Seals Goodwill. They are a 501c3 nonprofit organization here in Utah County. They have a program in which they do job placement for individuals of lower income who are over the age of 55, who are looking to get back into the workforce. And through this program, they find host agencies who act as hosts for these individuals to learn certain job skills and traits that will make them valuable in the workforce. And so we've been approached to be a host agency at the library and provide opportunities for these individuals to come and essentially work at the library at no expense to the library. They're paid by this nonprofit organization through funds that they receive through the United States Department of Labor. And essentially these individuals would work for up to 20 hours a week at the library, performing tasks such as checking items in, pulling holds, shelving items, kind of those entry-level responsibilities at the library. It's important to note that this isn't intended to replace any of our current or future employment needs. Rather, working as a host agency to help some of these individuals that are looking to get back into the workforce and get some of those skills that they need to be valuable in other places. We spoke with Springville City. They've been a part of this program for over a year. They use some of these individuals at their city office building to act as kind of that frontline staff, right? Helping staff or patrons coming in with questions, fielding phone calls, those kinds of things. So we think this is a great opportunity for us to be kind of the first department in the city to participate in this program and help identify, are there other needs or opportunities in city departments, say at the senior center or in other organizations within the city that could benefit from having some of these older residents participate in this program, work for the city through this organization and get ready to go back into the workforce. So this has been reviewed by the city legal staff, and we, the library staff, recommend approving this host agency agreement with Easter Seals. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Scott, what age did you say?
Sorry?
What age did you say?
55 and older.
55, okay.
Yeesh. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve Easter Seals Goodwill Host Agency Agreement as outlined by Director Scott Aylet.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Eagle
Thank you.
Golf Construction Agreement and Irrigation System. Oh.
No, he changed his tie.
Missed it by that much.
Just barely.
Just
barely missed.
All right, go ahead, Dale.
Mayor and council, you have before you an agreement for the construction of the golf course irrigation system. And for the benefit of the millions of was it millions or just a million?
Millions.
For the millions of viewers at home, this is to do a complete replacement of the 40-year-old golf irrigation system and put in a more efficient system, which was alluded to earlier by council members. We had 2 bids for this project. Eagle Golf Construction at $2,667,286.50. Made sure they got that 50 cents in there, didn't they? And the other bid we had come in came from Landscape Unlimited LLC, which was $3.2 million. We've also included in your packet a notice of award, so we're seeking to get approval for both of those tonight. So just for your information, we have, we budgeted $2.9 million in the budget, which we talked about in February. Of course, costs have gone crazy with irrigation pipe like they have everything else. You're looking at probably a 40 to 50% increase. So I want you to know that the agreement we're trying to get approved tonight is just for the installation of the irrigation system itself. In meeting with Chris and John Waters, so engineering and our water folks, we were planning to put in a pump system, and they recommended we go to gravity feed, which made a whole lot more sense, which would save us a substantial amount of money in power costs over the next 40 or 50 years, however long this system lasts. So right now we're looking at probably about $550,000 to do that. And we'll talk about those in a subsequent budget revision. But just for your information, this contract is just for that installation. So some of the other, and we got numbers on savings from not putting in a pump system and using the gravity feed, which is recommended, and it's going to be close to $50,000 a year just on power. So it'll help offset some of those costs and make this a much more efficient system. They're planning to start, if this is approved, in October, right after we host the state 5A golf tournament. Yeah, we're becoming one of those cities, right?
Epicenter.
They love to come epicenter of state tournaments. So they're planning to start in October, and will be, tentatively looks like they're scheduled to be done by May or June.
Okay.
This will not disrupt our golf course. They do one hole at a time. So occasionally you'll have a hole that's modified, but really efficient in terms of their system. This group they just finished a couple of golf courses in Utah. So they're very efficient in what they do, and they'll come in and get done and not have us under construction for extended periods of time. Any questions on the system?
So you mentioned that it's only for something. I'm not sure exactly what it's only for, but is it a complete system when we're done? Can we use it? Or do we have to spend more money to be able to?
Yeah,
use it?
sorry, we're gonna have to, our projected cost right now is gonna be about 3.5.
Okay.
And we budgeted 2.9. So in the last 6 months, costs have increased. I know pipe's at least 40 to 50% higher than what it was.
Just want to make sure that.
But also, the gravity feed system that Chris and the engineering department came up with is actually going to be cheaper than putting in the pumps that we had planned to do. Yeah.
It feels like we approved $2.7 million and we really approved 3.5. Because there's not much you can do with it if you're not connected.
Right.
To anything.
Well, and that's why I'm making you aware, because when we talked about this in February, it was 2.9 for the whole thing, and
Sure.
and obviously
I appreciate that.
obviously there's been some changes. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're approving 2.7 tonight, but it's not going to be
More to come.
useful if we can't connect the water to it. So that's accurate.
Okay. And you've identified the other $600,000 that you will need to finish it?
Yes. Yeah, well, more than likely, and as you know, we broke this cost down, which includes a loan to the golf course. What it ends up being net, because of the money that we will end up saving, is close to the same debt service that we have right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll share those numbers with you as we get closer. They're still trying to flush some of those out, but that's the estimate that they've come up with at the moment, which I think is pretty accurate.
Any other questions or comments?
The cost in dollar and water equivalent, again, I can't remember the number, but it was a 4 and then it was $1 million something.
Yeah, and I appreciate Councilman Argyle bringing that up. We're going to save 41 million gallons of water a year, and I don't remember what that equivalent was. I can look that up for you, but it's a significant amount of water. Yeah, just because our system's so inefficient.
It's like our golf course not having the Rachio system. Is what you're saying.
That's correct.
The equivalent?
Great. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve Eagle Golf Construction Agreement and Notice of Award for Golf Irrigation System.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Marshall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's go back up to B. Ordinance 16-21, amending Title 13 regarding utility price, since Seth is back. Or maybe Seth would like to make a statement. The reason Seth left, let me just say this, as he's wearing all blue. There was a gender reveal, his first grandchild. He walked back, he said, "I'll either be wearing a blue tie or a pink tie." I'm assuming the pink tie means you're gonna have a
Boy and a girl?
Yeah, little baby girl, you know just as well as anybody, I'm not going to wear red to support any other university ever.
Spanish fork.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I have a pink tie, and my daughters and son-in-law are going to have a little baby girl in January. So,
First one.
yeah, first grandchild.
There you go. Thank you. Had to get that out. All right, sorry, Vaughn, go ahead.
No problem. Mayor and council, the item tonight is for an ordinance, or there's actually a few different versions of ordinances for you to consider. But they're aimed at fixing an inconsistency between our utility policy and our city code regarding discontinuation or disconnection of utility services for non-payment. Let me just show you, this is a section from our utility service contract. When somebody signs up for utility services from the city, this is paragraph number 2, and there's 3 different sentences that we've highlighted for you. The first is the customer shall pay the fees and deposits that shall be established by the city and shall be further be subject to termination of services upon non-payment or failure to comply with rules, regulations, ordinances, or laws established by the city. Down in the middle section there, that middle sentence says the customer agrees to be bound by the utility policy of the city. Then the last sentence says the utility service is subject to city ordinances and policies established by the Spanish Fork City Council. That's all fine. On its face, that's why we would like that paragraph to read. We'd certainly want our customers to be bound by the utility policies and the city ordinances. Let me show you our city ordinance that deals with discontinuation of utility service. Really simple. If a person fails to pay their utility charges within 30 days of the due date, the city shall have the authority to disconnect or discontinue those services. Again, no issues there. What we found, though, is that our utility policy doesn't match the city ordinance regarding the timing of discontinuing services for non-payment. The utility policies vary by a few days, but can be less than 30 days. So what we have for options for you to consider tonight, you could change the ordinance to allow the existing policy that's longstanding and in use to continue. You could change the ordinance to be 20 days from the due date of the utility bill instead of 30 days. You could change our policy and our practice, to conform with the 30 days that are specified in the code, so shutoffs don't occur for non-payment before 30 days. Or you could change the ordinance to have it be 30 days from the bill date, or you could do no change and just continue with inconsistency. I don't recommend that. I certainly recommend making our policies and our ordinances consistent. And so there are 3 different ordinances in your agenda packet there for you to consider. Again, changing it to follow, and they're named, hopefully the name of the ordinance clues you in on what that particular ordinance does. There's one that matches the ordinance to the city policies. There's one that changes the 30 days to 20 days. And then there's another one that is 30 days from the bill date rather than the due date. You can consider any of those that you'd wish. If those are the only ones that would require an ordinance. If we don't want to do no change, obviously we don't do anything tonight. If you want to change the policies, we wouldn't do that through ordinance. We do that through an administrative policy that would be approved administratively. But we would certainly welcome your input on that. For the kind of an overview of the utility policy and the timeline that we have for collecting and billing, I want to turn it to Jordan Hales, our city treasurer.
All right, so I'm going to explain what we've been doing in practice for over 20 years. And I've brought Pam along with me in the back. She's our utility office supervisor, helps me with manage the office. All right, I wanted to start this conversation by explaining the services that we provide and show some of the services that some of the neighboring cities provide. And you can see that there's a lot of services that we provide, which is really awesome. A lot of people, when they're signing in for utilities, and they're amazed at all the different things that are on that one bill. It does lead to a larger bill, but it is just the one bill. All right, and I've tried to simplify this as much as I can. So here's the utility bill timeline for just one cycle. So over there on the far left, does this have a pointer? The red one? All right, okay. So over there, we've got the electric usage dates. So from May 16th to June 15th, the bill for that usage will be delivered around July 1st, or was delivered around July 1st. That bill was due on July 20th. The next bill, obviously, is going to be delivered on August 1st. And anyone that's past due that hasn't paid that July 20th bill, when they get this August 1st bill, they'll have another box on their bill that shows the past due amount. So it shows the current amount and the past due amount. All right. And then 2 weeks before we do shut off, so on August 18th is the shut off date for August. 2 weeks before that, we'll do a late notice reminder. And we use a tool called Everbridge to send out an email, a text message, and a phone call. So that's their second form of notification after the bill, letting them know that they're past due and when they need to pay. 1 week before shutoffs, we'll send out what we call a tag in our office. That's a mailer to the residents to let them know that they're past due and that they have a week to pay before they're shut off. And then we do a final reminder 2 days before shutoff day. That's another email, text, and phone call. Those work really well as long as we have a good email and good phone number. A lot of times when we're not getting a hold of people, that's because we don't have good contact information. So one of the first things we'll ask them is, this your correct email? Is this your correct phone number? So I've highlighted the bill due date and the shutoff date because that is what is inconsistent between the policy and the ordinance. The ordinance says that we won't shut off within 30 days of the due date. This is 29 days from July 20th to August 18th. So we're 1 day in front of that ordinance. And then obviously the next bill is due on August 20th. So I asked one of our staff today if we'd ever not shut off before the next bill due date. And she'd been here 21 years and she said no, that we've always shut off for the prior bill before the next bill was due. All right. So communication to past due customers. I'm going to start at the bottom here. We talked about these 4 different forms of notification that they get before their power is shut off. So the utility bill, and that can be mailed or paperless, the late notice reminder, the shut off notice tag mailer, and then that final reminder 2 days before. So we always shut off the Wednesday before the next due date. And we like Wednesday because that's the day that we're hoping that people will be home. You know, Friday's not a great day. Monday, people might still be on vacation. We're hoping that on a Wednesday that people are home. So that time can vary between the due date and the shut-off date between 21 and 30 days. So it varies because of the number of days in the month. So from February to March, you lose a few days in February because it's only 28 days. And then also being on a Wednesday, it's not a certain day of the month. So that time between the due date and the shut-off date does vary, but it's always the Wednesday before the next due date. All right. I just want to show some of our numbers. So we have over 14,000 utility accounts. Just about 9% of those will accrue a late fee that won't pay on time, which is really pretty low, and it's been going lower. We used to be 15, 16%. So we'll get about 9% that get a late fee. Of those that get a late fee, most of those are paid by the week before shutoffs, so they don't get this $15 tag. And then of those 291 that get a notice the week before shutoffs, we'll end up shutting off about 32 accounts on average. So it gives you a sense of what we're working with. All right. I wanted to put a plug in for our utility assistance program. I thought this would be a good time to bring it up. So the utility assistance program, we partnered with the Community Action, their food bank located in Provo. So we collect funds and then we send them to Community Action, and they actually administer the program. So here's some of the, for people that can qualify for assistance, it's only for Spanish Fork City residents. And to qualify for assistance, households must have a gross income under 150% of the federal poverty guidelines, or have suffered a life-changing event such as a death in the family or loss of job, that type of thing. In addition to Community Actions, the program we've created with them, HEAT program, is administered by the state, and that's another place that people can get assistance. And then we've added this on in the last couple of months, this temporary rent assistance program, to make people aware of this program that's been available since the pandemic has come about. All right, you can.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
I know, like, we can round up our bill.
Oh yeah, so
Is that
donating.
anyone- oh,
I
that's
forgot to.
donating. Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to donate, I forgot to mention that. If you want to donate to this program, you can do it a couple of different ways. One, you can have your utility bill rounded up to the nearest dollar. So if it was $29.75, you round it up, it'd be $30, and that 25 cents would go to the program.
So how does the donations go to any of these programs below that? Or
No, so
how is that used?
this donating to this program is only going to the program that we've established for our residents only, with Community Action. And people can also make a one-time donation. Jiffy Lube, when we did that voucher program last November, December, they donated all those vouchers that they'd received to the utility assistance program. I think it was about $4,000, which was awesome. Yeah, it was pretty cool, that local business. Yeah.
So are there 3 assistance programs then?
So yes, that I know of. So these two, Community Action, the one we've created with them, and HEAT are specifically for utility assistance.
Okay.
And then this is something that we just thought felt right to include on this webpage for rent relief. Yeah.
So Jordan, back to your very first slide,
Yeah.
where you had the timeline, sorry. That quote right there.
Yeah.
So the question, you're saying this is the issue here?
Yeah, so the issue is between these two yellow dates. Our ordinance says we won't shut off within 30 days of the bill due date, and this has been 29 days.
But at that point, we're also 21 to 30, 60, 90 days behind, right?
let me. So one thing that's interesting is if you look at, well, I guess this slide actually shows that the time from the usage to when you're shut off, that's been over 2 months from when the service was used to when you're actually shut off for that service. So one thing that we try to help new residents understand is that you're billed in arrears. You go and use the service, and then you're billed for it. So there becomes quite a bit of time between when you use the service to when you're billed for it. And we try and shorten that as much as we can, but it is quite a bit of work to get those bills out and then giving them time to pay the bill as well.
The one that you're mailing out a notice, is that the 8/11 box there, you're mailing a notice?
Yes.
And are you sending it in the mail that day, or is that the date it's received by the client, you know that?
It's the day you send it in the mail.
What's that time?
It's in the mail.
So that's the day it's mailed?
Days later?
Yes. Yeah, a day or two later. Yep.
So Jordan, explain to me how this ranges from 21 to 29 again.
So because it's always the Wednesday before the 20th, it could be anywhere from the 13th to the 19th, right? So if it's March 13th and the bill was due on February 20th, that could be 21 days. Yeah.
You want them home on a Wednesday when you go to,
We do shut-offs on Wednesdays because that's when we're going to have the most staff here. It's a busy day for our office, and hopefully that's when we're going to catch customers.
for us?
It is
And for the resident at the house?
Well, it's a busy day for our staff, so we like to have lots of staff here, and Wednesday we're going to be more staffed, but also for the residents, we're more likely.
I'll leave it for the
You
week.
shut me off
Yeah.
on a Friday and I'm gone.
Right. Yeah, if
What's
you're
gonna
on-
happen on my food, spoilage, things like that.
But when you go to there on a Wednesday and you're shutting them off, could they make arrangement then and call in and pay? And
Right, so of those 32 that get shut off, we'll get at least about 25. We'll usually only have a handful that are still off by 5 p.m. the day of. Yeah. Yep. All right. So why do we shut off before the next due date? The sooner you can collect, that leads to fewer utility write-offs. So these unpaid debts, when we do have to write off accounts, are subsidized by those that do pay their bills in full. Customers are never past due more than one bill. We don't want them digging themselves too much of a hole. And then compounding late fees. Because, so that late fee is 5% of the unpaid balance. So if we allow them to carry two bills to that, when that bill's generated, they're going to get 5% late fee on two bills instead of just one bill. Yeah. All right. So these two options in red are in red because they bring our ordinance in line with the practice that we've followed for the past 20 years. So that's my recommendation. It's what we've been doing for 20 years, and it seems to be working. Yeah. Some other options, like we said, are to change our policy and practice to match the ordinance, or we can continue with the inconsistency, which we would not want to do, I wouldn't think.
Explain to that, you're going to get to it. Never mind. Number 4 is confusing to me. So.
Number 4, so change the ordinance to be 30 days after the bill date. This is one I wouldn't recommend. So that's saying that we'd shut off 30 days after the bill date, which would be the 1st of the month rather than the 20th of the month. And I think that one's kind of confusing to people. I think most people are used to being shut off so many days after the due date, not after they received the bill. So the bill's around the 1st, and then it's always due on the 20th. So it's just moving that time period up 20 days. So this is the option 1 ordinance that Vaughn has written up. So this is simply changing it from 30 days after the bill due date to just reference the city policy and give the city policy control over what that is. So our policy is in line with our practice now. The other option is to simply change it from 30 days after the due date to 20 days after the due date.
So that would be the minimum, and
yeah, we'd always
your
be.
Policy would drive the 21 to 29.
Yeah, we'd always be at least 20 days at the shortest. So any questions for me or for
George, can I
Pam?
mention something on that?
Yeah.
So just so you're aware, we researched some of the surrounding cities, and Springville Cities reads pretty close to this. It's also 20 days, and then Provo's is written in a way that is similar to option 1.
Okay. Thank you. You're Mr. President.
As long as you don't have any questions for me.
All right. All right. I've promised Alvin. I'm going to give him 5 minutes to.
So I'm the one that caused this problem for the city, and I apologize there. But you know, the city council you have some responsibilities that you may not be aware of. You're the sole regulatory agency for city utilities. So if there was a privately run utility in the city, there are 2 government agencies at the state level that regulate that. They do not touch city utilities because the theory is that you, as the city council, can adequately be the regulatory agency. So I want to make you very aware of that and put that in the context of my things. So years ago, the city council, you know, prior city council obviously created some basic protections for the citizens of the city, giving them 30 days, as they talked about in the ordinance. And unfortunately, the city has been violating that law for 20 years. But it's not just been a situation where the city's known about this for some time. I became aware of this inconsistency over a year ago, and I mentioned to the head of the utility department, and at the time they said they knew there was a consistency between city policy and the law, but they indicated they needed to get that changed, but nothing happened. So 3 weeks ago today, as you're aware, Mayor, you were CC'd on that letter. I sent a letter to 4 officials, and I basically said, you know, get your act together, get your policies in line with the law, because the law is the regulatory document for the city. So the city council, probably a previous city council that created that regulatory document, but the city is obligated, the professionals in the city are obligated to do that. Now, it wasn't an ignorance of the law thing, at least for the past year, because there's been verbal notification that there was an issue there. 4 days ago, the city manager called me, and from that conversation, I learned that the city attorney, Vaughn, had told the city that the law, which was created by the city council, was irrelevant to the utility shutoff policies. So from what I was told, the city attorney told the city manager that there was no past liability for violating the law of the city, and that they could just go forward. And that concerns me greatly, and I hope it concerns the city council also. The reasoning that was told to me is that the city had utility policies, they said, and those utility policies, the customer agreed to those when they signed up for service. As you know, they don't have an option to write a contract with the city. They have to. That's the only way they can get service. And as a monopoly, the city acts as a monopoly when it comes to utilities. So there's no option. If you want electricity to your house, well, I mean, I guess you get solar. If you want to turn on the electricity to the house, you've got to agree to that policy. But the city was never given the legal authority to create those policies which violated city law. And that concerns me. That concerns me from a process perspective. It concerns me from the fact that the city is saying, oh no, we can write policies, we don't have to. Even if we know that law is in place, our policies override that. And so I believe the city council, as a regulatory agency for the utilities, has a responsibility to investigate this and go into deeper things. Now the city comes to you, and I had these remarks prepared, but obviously since I was notified Friday that this meeting was happening, and Vaughn has kind of given you guys some additional options from what was on the agenda beforehand, but they're coming to you asking you, instead of just complying with the law that has been in place for 20 years and getting their act together, they're now coming to you and asking you to change the law. And then, as this ordinance is written, also one of the problems with this ordinance is that instead of preserving the council's authority over the regulation of that shutoff policy, they're just referencing consistent with utility office policies. And they were not able to provide me any change control process that they're going to follow So in theory, anyone arbitrarily within the city utilities without consultation with the council could change those policies at any time. So do you realize they didn't give you a complete picture here today? Because under existing city policies, businesses have more protections than the residents. The policies allow businesses a week beyond the shutoff date before the power is shut off. So under those utility office policies, businesses get a week extra than the citizens. And apparently, they also require 4 different city officials to approve a business shutoff. So why are businesses given special treatment under the city policies when a family that may be struggling to put food on their table in the city is not? That's a question I think you guys should ask. And if you give the policy, if you give that regulatory power back to the city directly without any oversight by just saying, no, we can just go with your city office policies, I think that's something you need to consider. 30 days is not unreasonable, even if that means the city loses a little bit of revenue, which isn't very much. You put that in context with the amount of money the city spends, $3.5 million on new water system for the golf course, which is needed. But those 34 families in the city that are going to have their utilities shut off, there's no, certainly we can have compassion as a city. The city could afford to have compassion and give them an extra week. Now, I have had experiences with at least one family where, I got an urgent call from them, and their utilities had been shut off, and they were just looking for anyone to help. And that impacted me greatly. Because fortunately at that time, I was able to help them. I was able to go get some cash, because at that time it was cash only, and I think you can now allow them to do credit cards and stuff to catch up, but they had to catch up on the full balance. It was like once they're shut off, they have to not just pay the past due, but catch up. And so, fortunately, I was able to help them out, but the impact to that struggling family with young kids to having their utilities turned off was so drastic that I think we have to be very, very careful with our policies. Now, if the utilities were provided by a private enterprise, there are a host of additional protections that the state regulatory agencies mandate. And I don't really want to go into those at this point, but I actually want, my recommendation is that you go to the city and say, look, get your practices in line with the law, and then come back to us and let's talk. But in the meantime, what I think you should do is get a commission together, or get a committee together, maybe include some business leaders, maybe include some people that have had their power shut off, maybe include, a few others, maybe a couple of the council people, and look at what the state does when they regulate private utilities, and take your role of regulating the utilities to protect the citizens very seriously, and come back with even more options. So for example, the last city notice I saw from someone, the term, it was sent 6 days before it was only sent 6 days before state law for private utilities requires 10 days. State law for private utilities mandates the utility provide a one-time catch-up plan, deferred payment agreement, where the past due balance can be amortized over the payments for the next 12 months. It perplexes me that when I wrote a letter to the city to say, please obey the law, that instead of saying, oh yeah, we're going to obey the law, they asked the council to change the law. And when I asked them to make it right, I said, let's look at it for the past 2 years and make it right with anyone that you've terminated the utilities for because you were violating the law, that our city attorney would come back and say, nah, the city policies, because they signed a contract with us, we don't have to worry about that. So that's what I have to say. I appreciate your time. I know you guys are busy folks with a lot of responsibilities, but you're the only line of defense for the struggling families in the city in terms of regulating the utility policies, and I hope you take that seriously. Thanks.
Thank you, Alvin. Seth, do you want to address anything, and then I'll give the council an opportunity.
I don't have anything else to add. I think that Jordan and Vaughn were able to walk through really well. I don't know, Pam, if Pam really doesn't want to speak, but it might be helpful.
That's a first.
She's here. I think Councilman Mendenhall, you asked a question about those that get on the shut-off list and how that works. I think it'd be helpful. Pam, would you mind coming up, walking through some of the experience that you have? She gets to interact with people on a monthly basis or however often somebody's on that list. I want to highlight something that that Jordan talked about as Pam's already here. Wasn't that long of a walk, I guess, but due to the communications that we have with the residents, there are a number of touch points, if you will, whether they're text, emails, or letters, and that's the single greatest, I think, thing that we do is we work with the residents. And one thing that I'll ask Pam to touch on is when a resident is in a challenging spot, what she does with them on a monthly basis or on a semi-regular basis if they're in a challenging spot. Because that's, I think, what Mr. Black's comments really are about as we talk about those in need. And we always encourage the resident when they find themselves in a difficult spot to call us. And not just us, whoever their creditors may be, right? Don't wait until that shut-off day, whenever it is. Don't ignore the due notice. Don't ignore the text or the phone call. Don't ignore the letter in the mail. When you find yourselves in trouble, pick up the phone and call, and you'll find that the city staff there will work with you. And one, making payment arrangements, or two, identifying some of those additional resources that can be made available that will significantly help you. And Pam, if you would share some of that experience that you have.
Okay, so I've had, especially since in this past year with COVID and everything that's been going on, I have several residents that I have, and am still actually in the process of working out of being able to get them to being current on their utility bills. I've been working with them for over a year. Different circumstances. And I've actually, there's a lot of people that I do talk to on a monthly basis. I mean, it makes it sound like we fall within that policy and there's no ifs, ands, or buts, and that is not true. There are some circumstances that unfortunately people have not done what they have committed to do with me, though we have gotten into circumstances where we do have to at some point say, I'm sorry, we have given you, multiple chances to make arrangements or do something outside of our policy, and they don't do that, and we don't want to let people, that's what I try to tell people, as Seth said, to, please just communicate with me. If you'll communicate with me, I mean, I'm human too. I've been in different circumstances. I've been there, and I can empathize with people to these situations. And so without trying to be too personal with a lot of them, I'll say, without getting in too much of your personal life, can you tell me, are you affected by the loss of a job? Are you affected by medical issues? Give me a little bit of your situation, and I will refer them. I'll even put them in touch with our community action program. I will give them the information to get to Catherine, who administers our program for us for Spanish Fork City, and I'll be in contact with her. I mean, I'll be an advocate. I will work with them. I have about 3 people that come to mind right now that I am still working through from COVID. And I explained to them, I want these fees. I mean, we don't want to have additional fees with them going on. That's our goal, is to get them to where they're paying just their monthly bill without these fees, that they could use that money for other reasons. I mean, we're the same on that other end. We're working to accomplish a common goal. And we do have these policies in place, and sometimes there's not a choice but to follow those, but I really have, that's what that I do emphasize that with everybody. I'll ask them, did you receive your bill? Did you receive your shut-off notice? The first thing I'll ask them when I get them on the phone is, do we have a good contact number for you? I'll make sure we have that information. And then my next point will be, did you get the bill? Did you get the shut-off notice? Did you get the Everbridge notice? And a lot of times, most times they'll say yes. And that may be some people's, that may be a coping mechanism, is maybe they're not able to cope with it. But I just emphasize, you know what, please just call me before this happens, because it makes it a lot harder at this point for me to be able to work with you. And so, anyway, I've had some real, I've got a lot of people that I know on a first name basis and know a lot about them because I've talked to them enough that I know their situations. And they'll call me the next month and I'll say, hey, how's this going, or how's that going, or did you get that new job, or work picking up for you. And I have a lot of relationships like that. So I like to think that we do the best we can, realizing people are human, but so are we. We can emphasize with that and empathize. So does anybody have any questions about anything
I was going to ask what the percentage of business Mr. Black referenced. Businesses shut off and they have 10 days later, whatever. What's the percentage of businesses versus residential?
that actually make it to actual shut-off day?
Yeah.
Out of those, say, the example that we gave, I believe, was like 291 that we sent out the shut-off notices to. When we actually get to shut-off day, possibly one. And a lot of times, unfortunately, with the businesses, it's not an ability to pay. It's a corporation where things are getting lost in the mix. Their billing goes out of Texas and their business is here. And so something didn't get to where it needs to be. In all reality, it's not normally an inability to pay. I do have one business here in town that we worked with for a really, really long time. And we got them back on track as well. They're back on track. And that was by working with them. And we didn't even necessarily need to go that extra week. We were able to work with them within a time frame that we also established for our residents.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Well, maybe to piggyback on that, can you tell us why the businesses get an extra week? Or is that a question for Jordan or Seth? Is there any reason?
The extra week is, that actually started, we kind of put that into process shortly before COVID because of COVID. And it wasn't necessarily an extra week. It was more of a notification so that we can work with them a little bit better. We don't want to shut a business down to have them have an inability to make revenue.
So prior to COVID, it was on the same plan as residential?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Pam? Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Pam.
And the other thing I just wanted to say is if we were to go to the 30 days, that is, so we do have a 30-day bill cycle, so that would, where that causes an interference is that would make it, like Jordan said, they would accrue a late fee on a larger balance. We just don't, to reiterate, the reason is that we don't want people getting so far in the hole that they're unable to get out.
I apologize, can I just make a comment on that? Though?
Absolutely.
Can I make a comment on that?
Okay.
So I've heard that as an argument for why they don't want to do that, but, a $30 disconnect fee plus a $15, so a $45 fee is going to dwarf most people's late fees. So those extra fees that you're charging them is going to, any interest on that is going to dwarf that. You should, it's just not I just don't think it's a valid argument.
Thank you.
In the end, it's just math. Whatever their bill is times 5%. So if it's a $400 utility bill this month, and 5% of that is $20. If it's 2 months, it carries over, then it's 5% on, if the next month's another $400, and it's $820 at 5%. So I think one thing as a city, as the staff, we were comfortable with whatever. When we understood of the inconsistencies here, we have it here on the agenda to make sure that we get it right, whatever it is. Comfortable with whatever direction we go. But we want to make sure that whatever path we take, we can make it as maybe least confusing as possible. So if we adjusted it a week later, that's okay. I don't love the idea, professionally speaking, I don't love the idea of crossing over that other billing cycle because of that compounding nature. You know, whether it's an additional $20 and then a shut-off fee and then a tag fee, or a tag fee and then a shut-off fee. Those are additional fees that if we don't have to charge, I would like to not charge. Some could say, well, don't charge late fees. And I think that's something in the world that we live today. If you don't have a late fee on something, then your amounts get pushed aside, and well, I'll pay this one because there's a late fee, and I won't pay that one because there is a late fee. And this is a service. This isn't something that we're billing as a stable. You know, this is a monthly amount because of whatever. This is a service that somebody has consumed, right? This is power that somebody consumed because they're turning their lights on, and this is water that somebody's consumed through drinking, showers, watering their yard, or whatever. So these are services that are consumed, no different than you or I going to a restaurant or going to a store. And so having that late fee is, I think, an important part of, unfortunately, an important part of how society functions. So I don't like the idea of maybe eliminating that, but I also don't like the idea of compounding that and then having those additional shut-off fees. What I love the most is when a resident has a challenge paying their bill, that they reach out. And if they reach out, they get a hold of Pam, and Pam works arrangements with them. I think almost every time. I say almost because at some point maybe I've exasperated this line, 200 times, and she's like, I don't know what I can do with you. But even if I reach out in that circumstance, I'm guessing that Pam will actually work things out with them before they get to shut off. So in the end, that's the thing I love the most, and we want to see the most, which is why we have those different touches that we have, right, with the different texts, phone calls, and other things. So anyways, there you go.
So just a comment.
Yeah.
What's your name? Yeah.
I'm Alvin Black.
Black, that's right. Sorry, Mr. Black. So you're here accusing us that we've been breaking the law. Our policies need to be uniform, and the citizens need to be able to read them. But we need to probably fix that. That's a problem that we need to issue. Us putting together a commission, we are the commission right here. We don't need another body or commission. We can deal with this. But I spent 5 years dealing with the city and their utilities, and these policies were in place. And every time I called down with an issue, I got help. And that I don't want to ever see go away. So Pam can never retire or quit. Because working with the city and me trying to help a resident was something that needed to happen, and that happened every time. Now, sometimes it was pretty hard, this is what it is. We're at this point after so many times. But I don't want to see the city, and you mentioned this, you talked about residents, Mr. Black, that we need to be compassionate about that. And yeah, it's easy for us to write off a $100 bill, but then I get to pay for that and he gets to pay for that. We don't want to do that. We want to keep that as honest and straightforward, and you use the power, you need to pay for the power. But I don't want the compassion of the city to go away because we have a policy and a law that says, okay, this is what you do, this is what you do. Now when it comes to do that, we have to do that. We need to do that because you need to know that if you're not going to pay your bill, this is what's going to happen. But what Pam said was, you know what, and Seth said it, is if you take a minute and call me and let me know you're in trouble, and we've just gone through almost 2 years now of in trouble, and I'm sure her days have not been the most pleasant over the last year to try to help and get through them, and she mentioned she's still got some that are struggling, and I'm still sure that there's people out there that are still struggling, and hopefully they can reach out to us. I've learned that time and time again. And that just doesn't go for Spanish Fork City, that goes for every single bill. If you're in trouble and make a phone call, they're always willing to help, and that's medical bills and the gas company and the other power companies. They also have policies and laws they have to follow also. But I don't want to see the city lose that compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And if you pull up the slide that shows the number that go from utility accounts down to shutoffs, but maybe let me say something. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but I'm going to bring something up kind of in line with what you were mentioning, Councilman Argyle. Pam, I think, has probably one of the hardest jobs in the city because she gets to interact with people in some of their tough moments, right? And people don't say nice things when you're calling them about their past due utility bill. So I think Pam has a really tough job, and we really appreciate the compassion with which she does that work. And not just Pam alone, but all of the folks that work in that office. But I think Pam takes a lot of the brunt of that. So we really appreciate that. And there was one or two comments that were made specifically on Facebook about Pam, and I just want to say that was not good. And if anybody knows Pam as an individual, they'll know that her heart is as pure as gold, and her desire to help is as straight as an arrow. And I don't appreciate it when people say things about anybody in a negative way, but in this forum, I just wanted to address that. It wasn't Mr. Black that made that comment, but somebody in one of those threads, and I just want to make sure that maybe publicly we express our gratitude for the work that she does and how she goes about that. I want to reiterate maybe some round numbers, but about 91% of all residents pay their bill on time. And then between the time we go from the due date on the 20th to the time that we hit a shutoff date, whenever that is, as it works its way up or down on the calendar, it works to 0.3%. And so somewhere from the 20th of the month to that shutoff date, whenever that is, 9.7% of the residents that are in that situation, and businesses too, 9.7% of them figure that out with the utility office. And about 0.3% on average. It goes up and down, but quite frankly, the numbers have been really, really low. Just looking at them historically, going back 33, 26, 31, 33. And so it's really a great story that we aren't talking about a large number of people. That doesn't mean that the issue isn't important. That's not what I'm trying to say. But somewhere in the processes that we've outlined, 9.7% of those, getting from 0 to 99.7% find a way to either communicate or pay that bill. And so again, we're just talking about the timing of this, trying to make sure that it aligns. I'll sit down unless you have any other questions for me.
Any other comments on this?
Just really quickly on the empathy side of this, I like what Councilman Argyle said, and I think policy needs to balance that side of it, of not burdening the rest of the citizens, with paying other people's bill, but also leaning on the empathetic side. So I appreciate the tough job that you do have. The Community Action Services Food Bank that we donate to, I can tell you it's not just lip service to send them money, but the work that they really do is amazing. There's a program inside there called Circles of Utah Valley that focuses more on helping families in the budgeting aspect. I've served alongside our city employees at that location, and see really what empowers individual families that are struggling and not just struggling once, but struggling routinely, and giving them tools and resources and the help to not only maybe help catch up that one bill, but the tools for their family to try to end a cycle of poverty. There's real tools there, real people working shoulder to shoulder. And, just to speak of, again, that's a local resource in Provo, but Tabitha's Way is talked about all the time. I think that's the pin I got on here, but I'm telling you, the resources there. There was a few hundred families getting backpacks and school supplies that probably have a tough time paying their utility bills and other bills all the time. So the action of this community, that you could have been somewhere else on your Saturday morning, and along with Amber and along with a lot of the council candidates, and I know a lot of people in this city were there to donate their time and help families out. And so that's the most amazing part of getting to be on this side sometimes, is see the empathy of people, and not just people that work here, but people in the community. And so my plead there is just what's already been said: reach out. There's help. There's help from the city side, but there's help from these organizations that really do have a mission to end the cycle of poverty. And so if you're in some circumstances, there's some real help and some real tools and resources to end it, not just once, but for a continuous period of time.
Lon, sorry, I meant to have you.
Mayor
come
and
up.
council, I just want to clarify one point that needs to be clarified. I want to be clear that I did never advise that we ignore our ordinance or violate the law. That was suggested earlier. That's completely not true. What I suggested is that we make them conform, and that I drafted the 3 ordinances you have to consider tonight. So just want to be clear that did not happen.
We're done. Anything else on here?
I would just follow up with that, and I would say that I appreciate Mr. Black bringing up this, and on my 10 years on the council, I have appreciated when we find something like this, we try to make it better. So I appreciate that that's what we're doing here, and that we're working to find something better. I think what perhaps is happening, Mr. Black, is you've brought us something that needs to change, and that's what we're doing. There's no boogeyman here today, okay? There's good people working their butts off, and you talk about finding compassion, and that's all I'm seeing is compassion. And so let's try not to focus on what we found and focus on the solution. We've been given 3 solutions. We're going to vote on that. And I appreciate that you've brought it forth. That's all we should be able to say about it. If we go on for a long time and talk about, the negative aspect of this, it's going to only rip us further apart instead of bringing us back together. And we've heard great stories about wonderful compassion. I bet everybody in this room knows someone, including myself, that's been in a situation where their utilities are about to shut off. Nobody in here is not feeling compassion towards those individuals. And so I want to make sure that's very clear. We work very well together with council staff. We fight, we argue, we come to the table with solutions. And so I just want to make sure that that's understood at this point.
Edge. Councilor Marshall.
So first I want to say thanks for bringing it to our attention. There's no way that we can sift through all the ordinances and policies and make sure they're consistent. We just don't have the time. And without people like you looking at them, we're not going to make it better. So I appreciate that. I think that processes and policies are something we need to rely on as a government agency. The city needs to be able to rely on them. They need them. They need to be efficient so they can fall back on them. It just they have to be in place. We certainly need to be consistent. Pam needs that cover to provide that compassion that you just spoke about, Brandon. She needs to be able to look through that policy. I don't think it needs to be in ordinance by any means, but she needs to be able to look through that policy and say, this is where I can apply that compassion, and this is where I can't. This is where I have to make that hard decision to move forward. It just, relying on the goodwill of Pam every day puts too much pressure on our city employees. We need to provide the cover for them to make that happen. There may not be a Pam in the future, and so we need to build in that compassion as much as we can. I like the option where we don't give our accountability to the city staff. We own it, and we put a number in there, and they build policies around it. I think that's our job, and so I like that solution. But I'd like to see the policy that they put together that allows them to be flexible in that 9th hour when the power has to be shut off, and the steps that a homeowner and a family can take to see some relief. Because clearly there is relief there, and making sure they have access to it is important. But we need to make sure Pam has that cover to do it, so that she doesn't get accused, or someone in the staff doesn't get accused of playing favorite somewhere and not playing favorite somewhere. So I think we can build that into the policy and keep our ordinance pretty simple and straightforward, and give the staff the flexibility administer our policy, or our decision. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Once again, I appreciate you coming and then bringing this to our attention. That's what it's all about. That's how we here on the mayor and the council, people coming, just like the ones come here about the drag racing, the problem with the storm drain, you know, that's why we are here, for you to come and talk to us so we can help. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help. So right now, we have 3 ordinances up there that we can choose from. I would entertain a motion from any one of them. If there's one that you feel more strongly about, tell me why, and then let's go from there. I think, can you put back, oh yeah, there they are. So change the ordinance to follow the established policy, change the ordinance to be 20 days or instead of 30, change the policy practice, do not shut off before 30 days. I believe those are probably the.
Shane, can you elaborate then with your thoughts on
Sure.
which one of those 3? Or are
Problem.
you saying none of those?
No, I'm saying number 2.
Oh, okay.
I think the policy that the city's established is pretty sound and solid. It's well-defined, it's defendable, I like it. It's inconsistent with our ordinance. So I think that we should direct the city staff to 20 days. That way the policy does match our direction and we are consistent and we do not give the city the option of changing the policy at will.
Like to make a
So-
motion?
I would make a motion that we change the ordinance according to number 2, which is simply changing 30 days to 20 days.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Marshall, a second by Councilman Gordon. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck. Aye. Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Marshall.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Appreciate your time and coming and enjoy thank you for the discussion. I think that's good that we had here. Let's move down to E, East Bench Utility Agreement.
Okay, we had a project on schedule for this year to run a new pressurized irrigation trunk line up into the northeast bench area. This would help with some pressure fluctuation in that area and allow us to keep the pressures more consistent. As a part of that project, though, is we had a development in this area being proposed, one just north of it, and then a few developments along the route. And so we met with the developers, and we thought it would be well to get together and not just do the pressurized irrigation line, but do the sewer and the drinking water lines all at the same time. We've talked about this a few times. The key being that the road has to be overlaid after any trench. And so if we can do all the trenches at once and just overlay the road once, then it saves all parties quite a bit of money. And so we've been working that out for quite some time, and getting the developers to all work together is a challenge. And so this agreement kind of accommodates maybe them being in charge of their own utilities but working together. And so what we have is a couple changes where basically the developer right here will have a time limit to get his utilities in. He'll give us an easement right away, and then if for some reason he doesn't perform, then the developer down here can make sure that he performs. So this covers the next 2 items. The first one is with this developer, and the second one is with that developer.
This developer and that developer?
Bench and Park Estate.
Yeah, so this is Quiet Meadows on the city property over here, and then this one is Park Estates over here.
So we can do both of them at the same time?
I would do a different motion for both.
Both.
Yeah,
Okay.
make sure it's clear on the record.
All right, any questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the East Bench agreement as stated by Chris Thompson.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Nargal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Park East Estate Utility Agreement as stated. Any questions on that one? If
I move to approve the Park Estate utility agreement.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, discussion. Water, division, is
Frequent.
that a discussion item that you wanted to discuss with us?
Did we?
Yeah, the FAQs. If you can go to the city's website, and what we have, if you go, can you scroll to the top? If you look under all of the different Public Works websites, you will have something in the corner called questions and requests. And we received some training that each division in Public Works and really in any agency needed to list the top 5 to 10 questions that are asked of them and issues that are in the community, and then formulate a well-written answer to those questions. And this becomes very important, especially as we go to programs like Podium and some of these others where you actually are writing responses back to people that are documented. It's very important that those responses are consistent and are accurate. And so we've gone through a several-month process to write down the top questions that each of our divisions in Public Works are asked. We've interviewed a lot of the receptionist staff here at the city and a lot of the staff in Public Works. When people call, what are the questions that they're asking? And we compiled all of these for each division, and we've written a very well thought out, accurate, and consistent answer for those. And so we just want to take this time to go over the water ones, and then in a future council meeting we'll go over sewer and some of these others. And I believe sometimes you guys get asked questions, and so it might be good for you to know where the answers are to a lot of them anyway, and have that at your fingertips.
We just can't make up an answer?
Well,
These
you
guys-
can. It's just we found that method isn't as consistent as other methods.
Or you could-
So
We've been just
so we're proposing a
Good.
better option. So
This is how engineers talk.
so here we go. One of the main questions that were asked is, how do I shut off my drinking water or pressurized irrigation sprinkler system? And so if you click on this down arrow,
You bet.
there is a detailed answer to that. We even have a video showing where the valves are and how to do it. And so if you ever get asked that question, this is a great resource for that.
So if I searched on YouTube for the answer to this, would this come up?
If you write Spanish Fork, probably.
All right.
But if you don't write Spanish Fork, there's a lot of different ways. Yeah, so.
Yeah, a welder.
We spent millions of dollars putting this together. Why would you go to YouTube?
Good point. Okay, so the next one is, how do I locate my meters and shut off valves? Basically, they're in the park strips. We describe what they look like. The pressurized irrigation meter is in a green box, and the water is in a round metal box. Okay, and it's weird that they call a round thing a box, but they do. Okay, the next one is there's water coming out of my meter lid or in the street in front of my house, which I do. This is something that's very concerning to us. We want a call to this emergency number right away. So if a receptionist here at the city gets this call, we immediately want the call transferred to that number so that we can get out there and check on it right away. The next question, I received a leak letter from the city. What do I need to do? So this kind of talks about what are the basic steps to isolating that leak, to find out how it is. Councilman Argyle was talking a little bit about our smart meters, which can meter to the nearest gallon. Because of this, we can pick up on leaks pretty easily. And we know when there's a consistent amount of usage that doesn't match what is normal. Okay. And then how to isolate the leak and what to do there. The next question we have listed here is, are there any watering restrictions? So there is a lot to this answer. One of the biggest thing is we meter our water, whereas most cities don't, and so we can do restrictions in ways that these other cities can't. We can have tiered rates. A city that doesn't meter cannot have tiered rates. They have no idea what the people are using. The other thing is that we have seen is that metering, doing water restrictions does not often cause conservation. All it does is it makes sure that every other day when I can water, I make sure I water, whether I need to or not. Even if it's raining, I'm going to water because I'm not going to be able to water tomorrow when it's not raining. Whereas if you educate people on responsibly watering, you give them the tools like smart meters, smart irrigation controllers, those type of things. And this talks about all of that. And then there's a link that talks about all the things the city is doing for water conservation. So this is a great resource if someone's complaining about not having water restrictions. The next one is, how can I know my water pressure? We actually have a map that shows where the water pressures are, and it gives you some recommendations on what to design your sprinkler systems to. A lot of times people will want to know that when they're designing their sprinkler system. The next one is, what are the boundaries of the irrigation companies in the city? If you click on that, there's a map. So here's all the different irrigation companies, and they can get a PDF version of that and zoom in if they'd like to see exactly on their property. Okay, going down. A lot of people are not sure what flow versus pressure is when they're designing their sprinkler systems and stuff. So this is a little explanation on that. We get a lot of questions when people are getting into their sprinkler systems. Next one is, pressure in my home has slowly decreased or is too high. What can I do? Here's a little explanation about what your PRV is. We found a lot of builders put in PRVs that are too small. And because of that, there's a lot of problems with it. They wear out quickly. And so we try to get the people to go to those, and quite often their plumbers just need to replace
Do we
them.
require bigger ones in our building code?
Yeah.
Would that be wise?
Is it a cost thing?
Well, it would cost more, but my heavens, we should look into that.
Was that a subtle way of saying I had a good idea?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. See that, Shane? That, Shane?
I didn't understand
Would
that
you
at all.
turn to Shane and tell him that, please?
If you,
Shane,
good idea, Councilman Gordon.
you're learning.
Brandon,
Water's on, because the valve is.
4 years.
that is not Brandon's first good idea.
Thank you, Chris.
The road,
The microphone, please.
the road 1100 East.
Wait a second.
Holy cow. I think your time is up. Yeah, I think
Take all night.
you're not going to answer. Are we going through every one of those questions?
That's
I don't think.
There's just a few more.
We've only got 7 more.
Let's do this on our own tonight, later.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if you go to the sewer, if you go to the streets, all of them, they all have their own FAQs. And I would encourage you to kind of look at that when you get a question, and a lot of times you can refer people to it, or of course you can refer them to us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
We should have all the departments follow your lead on that. What a good idea, Stacy.
Wow.
Boy, you didn't get it, you didn't get
Take it
anything
easy,
from me,
Stacy.
did ya?
Wow.
Wow.
Take it easy there.
No, but like Dave's office, that would be really great, like his top 20 questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. We do appreciate, and that's a great tool for the citizens, because there are a lot of questions. You can go, and there's the answers. All right,
I move we adjourn to close.
Wait. No, I need to, where'd he go? Seth, come here. I did not articulate what I was hoping that they would do with the policy very well. So, the ordinance has changed. That is fine. But Seth,
Yeah, let me get Pam and Jordan.
okay.
yeah, if you're gonna create policy,
Well, they don't have to do anything right now, right? The policy now works with the ordinance.
consistent.
It's consistent. So what I try to articulate is that I would like to see the policy change so that Pam has some more cover and some more discretion on how she administers the last few days of the shut-off.
And I don't know that it needs to, because she may already have that.
She may already
but
have it,
let's-
and I
we'll,
just
yeah,
have
we'll
not
look at
seen
that.
it. Okay,
For sure.
perfect.
And we'll maybe highlight
That's,
where it exists, if it does, or where it's deficient and we can improve
okay,
it.
perfect.
Yeah, happy
Thank
to
you
do that.
very much.
I
And
will agree
Pam,
with that.
thank you for your service. Job well done. It's not an easy gig at all. But I thank you for it.
I enjoy working with our residents and getting to know people. Sometimes it's not the best circumstances,
Yeah.
but I also get to know a lot of great people.
When I worked at the department, we had this lady that would have to call people that had run into UDOT equipment, a pole, an attenuator, and something, and say, hey, we're going to charge your insurance for this. There were times when that call, that accident crash resulted in a fatality, and she had to still make that call. It's not a good spot to be in. And so that's where my point is, the policy covering that kind of conversation is exceptionally helpful to the employee.
And can I point out that it's not just me, it is the entire staff. It's just, yeah, it's not just me that takes care of this. This is our entire utility office, and everyone does a great job. It's just those that require a little bit more time or effort, like a little bit more. Yeah, they kind of wind up with me, which
Awesome.
is just fine.
Appreciate it. I really do. Thank you. Thanks, Seth.
okay.
Go for it, Brandon.
I move we adjourn to closed session for land transaction and reasonably imminent litigation.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, and a second by Councilman Marshall. Oh, Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are now going to closed session. Thank you for everyone that was here tonight. Appreciate it.
I know.
Please watch council.
So I want to take away his.